A very good evening and welcome to this edition of the Fourth Estate, this second weekend of the year 2020. My name is Charles Mwangu Shampagi, and tonight we'll be discussing President Yoweri Museveni completed on Friday his trek from Galamba, here in near Wakiso district, to Virembo in present-day Kakumiro district. The trek of 6 days, the facts we have now is that the actual distance walked is 74 kilometers, but the entire distance for the whole journey is 195 kilometers. We'll be discussing that. What has this helped President Museveni achieve? And the discussion. We are writing in the East African, for example, this week to look at it exposing the underbelly, the soft underbelly of the President Museveni and the NRA. You have very good statistics nationally, but the lives of the people along that trek and that very ugly video of him handing out envelopes to elderly, impoverished individuals. But we'll discuss the politics as well. People Power and the Electoral Commission hold a meeting to discuss the consultation, the consultative process of Robert Sentamu Kyagulanyi, also known as Bobi Wine, who is gunning for the presidency, but we also have an announcement of Moses Byamugisha, indicating he's a young man, a very committed young man of the Forum for Democratic Change, indicating that he intends to challenge for the presidency. I also saw, I think, Onyango of the police saying he wasn't aware that there were already 4 presidential candidates, but we'll discuss that. What does this mean for Bobi Wine and the People Power? What does this mean for the Electoral Commission and for the Uganda Police Force? They've been issuing contradictory statements of what happened in that closed-door meeting at the Electoral Commission. We'll also discuss Rwanda and Uganda after that visit by Ambassador Adonia Yebare. You must have seen him here with my colleague Patrick Kamara on Thursday, discussing the attempt to normalize relations between Uganda and Rwanda. You also must have followed the news on Minister Sam Kutesa giving a brief where Uganda withdrew charges against some of the Rwandan nationals who were being charged before the military court-martial. The charges were dropped and they were handed over to immigration to process them for repatriation to Rwanda. The voices coming out now are that victims of the alleged activities of some of these officials who are linked to the Rwandan military and intelligence are crying out and saying they haven't gotten justice, and they are not any safer now that the political front and the diplomatic front, the two governments are trying to normalize relations, and these are the compromises they're making to let these people go back. I think there was also a report about Ugandans held in Rwandan jails being released in response to the action of the Kampala government. We'll also be discussing that. And if time allows rather, we'll be discussing efforts by the Electoral Commission to challenge the ruling of the Constitutional Court that said 6 members of parliament should get out. Those who were elected for newly created municipal councils should get out. The Electoral Commission feels the ruling was unfair, and once it's challenged, they haven't yet filed an appeal. What we know is that they have, one, they're seeking an injunction of the implementation of the ruling, but number 2, as they are also asking for the court record so that they can prepare grounds of appeal. To discuss that with me is one of the journalists who was actually on the trek, 195 kilometers from the daily, from NTV, from us here at NTV, Herbert Ziwa. Very nice to have you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, viewers, wherever you're watching from.
People have been asking, did you actually walk? Did you walk the whole distance? How much did you walk?
I walked, but at the same time I had to walk. So my walking.
So for you, you're not a trekker.
No, I wasn't.
You were deployed.
I did both.
To cover.
I walked and walked.
Yes.
Your
walking was to work.
Yes.
You walked to work.
Yes.
We did that in 2011. The same. Very nice to have you, Herbert Ziwa. We also have with us Agatha Atweire. Agatha Atweire is an independent journalist and a lawyer. Very nice to have you.
Thank you, Charles.
Did you walk? Did you trek?
No, I didn't even attempt.
You didn't even attempt?
No interest whatsoever.
You're not among the Bazukulu? You're
No.
following the trek on Twitter and
I
WhatsApp
don't think I'm that
and Instagram.
patriotic.
And we have with us Moses Cheyune. Moses Cheyune is a reporter with the Daily Monitor based at Parliament. Very nice to have you, Moses.
Thank you, Charles. Good morning, viewers.
Let's start with that trek. It's ended. Personally, I think that to put it in proper perspective is to see what comes next to it and what preceded it, who organized it and what the intentions were, and evaluate whether those intentions have been achieved. Now, for a bit of that perspective, the walk ended. Next, we're walking into the National Executive Committee of the ruling National Resistance Movement. This is the second highest organ, third highest organ, because you have the National Conference, which is the highest organ. You have the National Executive Committee, is it?
Yeah.
NEC, and then you have
Sick.
You have
no, you have SEC,
SEC,
then
NEC,
NEC.
and the National Delegates Conference.
National Delegates Conference. The National Delegates Conference actually in
It's just
structure is
coming.
supposed to be there,
The-
the topmost. So NEC will be meeting 20th and 21st, from 20th.
What I know is that the Delegates Conference,
Uh-huh.
the topmost
NEC
organ
will,
of
yes,
the party
NEC will meet first, and
Yes.
then the Delegates Conference
Yes.
will happen next. They
24th
are
and I think
they are linked together. When you walk out of that, on 26th of January, we mark 34 years since President Yoweri Museveni and the National Resistance Movement took power in Kampala. Then you walk out of that immediately. On 6th February, you commemorate 39 years of the National Resistance Army, where actually this trek is anchored. So the end of the trek is commemorating the success of the liberation struggle, and the 6th of February is the beginning of the struggle. Between them, 5 years. So if you're celebrating 34 years since President Museveni took power, then you're marking 39 years since he started the struggle for liberation, or at least this phase of the struggle for liberation. Ziwa, let me start with you, Ziwa Habad. You were on the trek. The contradiction I've seen debate on social media: 74 kilometers, 195 kilometers.
Thank you very
Which
much.
was which?
Charles. The fact is, the president walked 74 kilometers out of the 195 kilometers. On the first day, I think he walked something like 28 kilometers because there was supposed to be 32, but because of time, it was getting dark. He was driven to the first center where we slept. The second center from Galamba, that's called Bukatira in Nakaseke district.
Put this in perspective. 28 kilometers is a distance of about from where to where, if we're using this Serena Conference Center as the starting point, or as they do the official count from post office.
Yeah, I think from post office
heading to Entebbe Road.
Entebbe Road up to Chisubi, I think, around Chisubi. Is that 28?
Would that be it?
Further than that, but he walked 28. But there were stopovers. He would rest, have something to
It's about 30 kilometers up to Nkumba, I think.
Yeah, I think around Nkumba.
Yeah, around Nkumba. Okay.
It's around Nkumba. So that was the first day. He walked 28, but because it was getting dark.
And that is when you're using the old Entebbe Road, the normal Entebbe Road, not the expressway.
Yes. The second day, he walked.
From what time to what time?
He walked from I think 9
In the morning.
in the morning up to evening. But he used to have stopovers because he used to meet people on the way, and he stops. He addresses them and walks away, gives envelopes like that. Second day, I think he walked close to 12 kilometers from Bukatira to another center. He walked, and then they were driven to Chiboga, Bukomero, where they rested. Then the third day, he walked 6 kilometers, but climbing the hill, climbing Butera Hill in Chiboga, where he says from when they attacked that barracks in Mubende, Kabamba, that's where they retreated from and rested. From there, we drove something like 6 to 8 kilometers to Butorogo in Mubende, and there he also walked a few kilometers till the last day when he walked 14 kilometers.
Okay.
So out of the 195 kilometers, the president only walked 74.
74 kilometers.
Yes.
It's a significant feat for a man his age.
Yeah.
Because even if they asked the four of us here to start to walk, she said she wouldn't even dare. But to start from...
It's not because I can't.
It was a plus for him because you would see he was the only constant apart from security. But the rest of the guys who are working with him were getting off. The ministers who started with him, for example, Galabuzi walked the first and second day. He was
And,
no more. Nankabira
was
walked
knocked out.
first, second, third. You would see them jumping in 2 cars waiting for him in on the next stopover. So for Museveni as a person, you really have to give him credit. He walked the 74.
I say Agatha is smiling and...
She has too, but the man walked.
what do you want to say about it? Seriously, what do you want to say about it?
Sure. You are accusing me of saying I wouldn't dare. That wasn't because I'm not able. It was because it doesn't, like, I didn't understand its significance, and I wouldn't go participate into something whose value I don't get.
Yes, but me as a person who was there, this trek I think had 3 major issues. One is that Museveni wanted to check on his system, whether it is still working or not. By the system,
one?
I mean his NRM system. Are his people delivering his message on the ground? And there was a contrast. You would see people clearly telling him is that you're so detached from us, we don't know what is happening, what is going on.
We don't feel
We
your
don't
government.
feel your government on the ground. And the excuse he would give was that MPs,
People are
NRM
letting him down.
MPs, are not working for the people. And
He suggested that
they should have meetings
at
and what
parish
have you,
level.
at parish level,
Yes.
consultative, and people should come out and give their views about the system. I think that was one of it. The second reason why Museveni trekked was to mobilize, campaign for his party. On the first day, it was
For
a normal
himself.
trek, but on the second day, he came out clear and said, we would not just walk, move, we had to mobilize.
What kind of crowds was he meeting?
The crowds Museveni was meeting were staged by politicians attached to the NRM in that region. As a member of parliament or an LC5 chairperson, it was incumbent on you to mobilize trading centers for the president to find their
People.
people.
And
To speak
were they big crowds as we see? Because if you're just looking at them from on TV, how you pan your camera and what you're able to capture, how significant, how big were they?
I wouldn't say that they were so big, apart from one of the areas called Butorogo in Mubende. Deep there in Mubende, no internet, no network. There we found there a very massive crowd, very many people. But also these crowds, there are those who were not from that particular area. Because I saw some
They're
boys I
busted.
normally see in Kampala putting on yellow t-shirts and berets, but I see them in Kampala
Maybe that's where they
on the
born.
forefront. Maybe they also wanted to pass out their message to the president to see them, but you would see also some locals in big numbers waiting for the president.
Okay, let me just put this before Agatha comes in. Agatha and Moses here come in. We're debating last week the presence of some of the Bazukulu, and notably the new kids on the block. You see the Balam Bargahares, you see the full figures. Full figure was a key feature.
DJ Michael.
Yes, DJ Mike and the others. How much did these walk? Did they stay the course?
Okay, you know, the start was an excitement for everyone.
Yes.
Everyone tried to walk as much as they could. Some of us walked 10 and said,
And gave up.
But for the musicians, I highly doubt whether they walked. A few of them tried to walk on the first day, but
They
after
jumped on
backed
borders
they
or
backed
got
off, they would
into
wait
cars?
for the big man at the
At the
next
next stop.
stopover, refresh a bit, jump on another border, like that.
Agatha, let's first look at this from the perspective of the president for his age. 75 years this September. To be able to endure, even with stops, 28 kilometers on the first day, starting at 9 a.m. with this amount of sunshine and heat. does this say something about him, especially given that you've seen images coming from the trek trying to portray him as frail?
From the trek?
Yes, from the trek, largely from the trek, trying to portray him as frail, and him trying to push back against that on this trek to say, I am fit, I am strong, I decided to lose my weight, to lose excess fat because I had not been told by the doctors that this excess fat was unnecessary. Does this, in a way, diminish that his energy as a campaign issue as we're in this campaign year?
President Museveni's energy, or lack thereof, becomes an issue in the context of how long he has stayed in power and how long he intends to stay in power. For us, who want him to leave power, want to think he's grown old and frail and therefore cannot handle anymore. And for him, he wants to prove with all that exercise, you saw him at the running when he was declaring the fitness day or something. You see how sometimes he runs up the stage. For him, that is to show that I still have. He did
push-ups in Rukunjeri sometime back, I think.
So for
during the last campaign.
For him, that is to show that I still have stamina, like they say, and I can still go another 5-10 years. Didn't he say he's retiring in 2036? So he's trying to say that I can still go all this long. Because otherwise, for us, like for me, I don't see how Museveni having energy, how it concerns me really. Like that's good for him, but that's the context in which it is that for us we are hoping that he no longer has the energy.
No, but people have been actively trying to use his age and his energy as a campaign issue, and it will come up because you see the contrast. You see people saying, especially the framing of international media, is he's facing a challenge from a 37-year-old. 37 years, 75 years, that's half his age. As we go into the next context.
No, Charles.
Yes.
I think, and many people have said that. You have a president in the US, Donald Trump. How old is he? He just came into power the other day. Isn't Donald Trump in his early 70s as well?
Yes, about 72, I think.
Yeah,
now.
You have all these presidents that come when they are already old. So the problem in Uganda's case is not that we think Museveni is too old to lead. It's that we think he has stayed too long. And we want, because we have, some of us think these other measures, elections, what have you, will not make him leave. We want to have that hope that he has grown old and frail, and naturally he will leave.
Okay.
The man has showed you that he's still strong.
And I've told you that even him, that's what he wants to prove.
But you see, imagine,
I think
imagine
you're
an
not
old lady.
answering my question. My question is, does this trek help him discount that as a campaign issue? Because we know it is going to be a campaign issue.
It does. Though, yesterday in the press conference, I tried to ask that same question. Does this work show people out there who have been thinking that now you're gone, you're no longer fit to lead us? Does this trek show them that you're still capable? And he avoided it. He only smiled and said, okay. Does Museveni want to prove anything?
But, but also...
By me,
so he answered the question in a way.
Yeah.
If he said, does Museveni want to prove anything?
It shows you, it puts away the doubts from, leave alone us, who know that Museveni is aging, he's no longer the Museveni of 50. But an old woman there who saw Museveni walking, or who waited for him from morning to evening, and finally, she saw Museveni walking, it is a plus for her. She does not think of the argument that Museveni is no more his old, he has overstayed.
I need you to come in, Moses. On the same age thing, Agatha was bringing in the perspective of the United States. By the way, by the time we turn we roll over this month and possibly the next month, all the contenders for the Democratic primaries will be in their 70s. The others are dropping off.
Sanders.
Joe Biden, who is the front runner, Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, are all into their 70s already, and they're running for the presidency. But you see the people, especially in the last campaign and the previous one, some of the yellow girls at Parliament, I think, especially for the previous run, and then the most recent one, the most recent one, Achali Mboko, is a common phrase for the campaign. How does a contender like Robert Senta Muchagulanyi respond to this in the circumstances? How does he play the edge card if that became necessary on the campaign trail?
Well, that's quite a tricky one, because the aging man has proved that he can walk at least a distance that no one expected him to cover. Most of my colleagues were arguing that it is not possible that the president is walking all this distance. But those that were on the ground have proved at least he walked 74 kilometers. In this case, the issue of age, like earlier discussed, does not come in. But where does it leave, to answer your question? A youngster who is coming up with fresh blood, 37 years of age, and appealing to the new breed of Bazukuru. My argument would be, this question is not about, this campaign is not going to be a campaign of age. Because we've seen so many people from 47, 60, and now you have President Museveni with 75. What is going to sell whichever candidate is coming is going to be the message and how you appeal to the public. When you look at Kyagulanyi, for instance, you'll see that someone portrayed the cartoon of Kyagulanyi on Museveni's shoe. And Museveni could have walked even 95 kilometers or even 100, but the shoe was heavy because of Kyagulanyi, who was stuck down there on the shoe sole, perhaps cutting down some of the pace. Now, coming to Kyagulanyi, you'll find that the message he sells out, he's coming in with new promises that actually affect the people, and he's saying, guys, I'm your generation. This man cannot rule us for all this time. He cannot rule an entire generation, even when he's aging, and we keep supporting him. We must have a new political agenda, and the face of that agenda is me.
Okay.
But
quickly.
you see, Charles,
yes.
If you looked at how this trek was structured, you would see that Museveni also tried to reconnect with the young people, the Bazukuru, because most of the participants were young people, live around security and a few historicals.
Well, even in security, you have largely young people.
Yeah, he had children of the historicals, the veterans. He had youth leaders from the NRM, from the 20 zones. He had people, the musicians. So you look at the structure of the people who are participating.
But I think these are people that have been fed.
Yeah, yes.
Okay. And not people that are attracted to
but if
he was sending a message
yes,
that I'm trying to reconnect with the young people who thought that maybe I was so detached from them. He's trying to reconnect with them. By the way, they structured the participation of this.
Now, the images that we're just running here on that attempt to reconnect, the humiliating poverty that he met along the trek. I want to get your take from each one of you. What does this say? How does this fit in? How does someone respond to this? And we have about 3 minutes to take the break.
Me or
all of you. We can start. Let's start with Agatha then, and then we'll come to you.
Let's start with Zuma.
Okay, Zuma, take it on, because
by Museveni giving out envelopes, it is a clear message that in the places where he fought from, there's still too much poverty affecting the people out there. Despite the fact that he was driving a narrative that people are no longer living in grass-thatched houses, people have mabati, they would even talk about receiving coffee seedlings and what have you. But you would go behind and ask, how did this person construct this house? After selling off part of their chipanja. So you would say that people are still in poverty, despite the fact that they contributed to the struggle, and maybe the programs that Museveni is launching in Tandikwab or Nabagagawale have not transformed
Operation Wealth Creation
the communities in these regions.
Agatha, what do those images say to you, and how do they fit in a campaign year on a trek that is supposed to help people reconnect and remember his contribution, the contribution of the NRA, NRM to a better life?
They said to me nothing more than I knew, especially from us who are journalists and we go seeing these things, that poverty in this country, which is why we have always questioned the statistics that we are growing at 6% every year, 6.57, and we wonder where do they get this growth? Because when you move around the countryside, even in Kampala here, you have people who can't afford 3 meals a day. So it's maybe now here because it's right where he fought from and claimed to have liberated Ugandans from, it becomes more humiliating and worse. But yeah, it's what the country is going on.
Yes.
Yes, Luwero is the maker of the liberation. Museveni is going to be celebrating yet another milestone on 26th January. But when you look at the pictures, like we've seen, you find that most of these children are grandchildren of the fighters. The women are widows to the fighters. Now, with their poverty clearly visible to everyone, even to Mzee himself, I think it shows that Museveni has got nothing more to offer. And the people, except if gulled, they have seen that the struggle is supported, has not come to help.
But those cheering people don't look like they would deny him a vote.
They have been given some money.
You can cheer someone out of excitement.
Yes.
I'm afraid you need
But
to
it
take a
doesn't
break,
mean
but
that you're well off.
I think Herbert raises something very interesting. On Friday, we're discussing this on the Friday panel of journalists on the hot seat with Andrew Mwenda. And Andrew was saying, no, look, people have built better houses than they had before. But where the money comes from to build those better houses is not coming from their shambas. It's not profit from trade or their shambas, but actually a loss of what they think most Ugandans treat as an asset, which is a piece of land. So you slice off a piece of land, start building. If the money is not enough to roof the house and to complete it, you slice off another piece of land, which is the same thing many people have done to get their children an education. And what does that mean? Let's take a commercial break. When we come back, we'll be going into the meeting between the Electoral Commission, Robert Sentamu Kyagulanyi, and the police to try and resolve issues around their consultative process, Kyagulanyi's consultative process for the presidency. We'll be right back. You're still watching the Fourth Estate, and we're discussing the major events that dominated news headlines during the week. On midweek, the police, for a moment, closed part of Ginger Road between the traffic lights at Gitkum House and the roundabout, what is known as the Airtel roundabout, the one that has that Airtel clock, where the headquarters of the Electoral Commission are, because of a request and an invitation to one of the contenders for, he has declared already, so one of the contenders for the presidency in the next election, Robert Sentamu Kyagulanyi, commonly known as Bobby Wine. He's a member of parliament for Chadondo East. He wrote to the Electoral Commission and said he intended to do nationwide consultative meetings to weigh his bid for the presidency. The Electoral Commission wrote back to him and told him it is okay. He communicated to parliament and apparently informed the police, but every attempt he made returned us to what was known as the Benghazi in 2011, Kasangati, where there were throwing of tear gas and fights between him and his supporters. And I think about a dozen of the close circle around him, including himself, were briefly detained before they were released.
Not briefly.
Briefly, because most of them are out already. Some might be still in. Agatha, can I start with you? The discussion, the tripartite. I want to project it as a tripartite: the police, the Electoral Commission, and the aspirants.
Yes.
Yes, represented in this case by Kyagulanyi.
We discussed it briefly here on Sunday, and we were predicting that this will happen. Because from what I gathered, like you said, Kyagulanyi wrote to police as is required by the Public Order Management Act. But police never formally
responded.
responded. Although there was stories saying Bobi Wine cleared by police and EC, because I think one of the spokespersons held a press conference where he says it's okay, it's his right, but there was never a formal response. So when they start by saying, oh, this is an open place. That's what they said in Kasangati. I have looked at the law to see where they say it can't be an open place. I haven't found it. And so I don't know what basis they use to say that. But even where there are no open places, like in Lira and where else they were going, they would always just get there and they say, no, this won't happen. So the meeting with the Electoral Commission, even Electoral Commission was asking the police that. I doubt it will solve anything, because they knew what they were doing when they were stopping them, blocking them. Not just blocking them, we should talk about Kasangati and the children's lives that were endangered and ask if that's necessary. That's excessive force. And for what?
The police apparently has structured this as the work of young, overzealous officers. I find this curious, Moses, that these same words were used previously. In Kasangati, during the walk to work, a tear gas canister was lobbed into a primary school. A number of children fainted. You see a repeat of the script of what we saw before. What's different? What's new now?
I think what we are going to continue witnessing are such clashes. The police knows why they are doing them, and the police looks at every new entrant, a new player into the political playing field as a threat to their either stay or their boss. But
I thought the police is a national.
No.
Yes, I thought the police is non-partisan.
The state and these agencies are supposed to be non-partisan. But over time, we've come to see that they instead work for the incumbent. We've seen that General Mugisha Muntu went ahead and consulted before registering his party. He has been consulting even after registering his party, and there has not been any scuffle.
And Mugisha Muntu is not part of the incumbent. He's part of the opposition.
Well,
so how can they be working by letting Mugisha Muntu consult freely?
Mugisha Muntu has been referred to as a mole several times.
No. By allowing him to consult, how are they working for the incumbent?
But by stopping Bobi Wine, why would they stop him when they're allowing another player? In this case, Mugisha Muntu.
Why do you think?
Why do you think?
Because I think the weight of Bobi Wine.
What have you been able to find?
Have
you asked this question?
I think the state has capacity to read the situation. The state has been able to understand that, hey, Bobi Wine has got real support that is so threatening to the existence of the long-term ruler. And that's why they are saying we cannot allow you.
Moses, you are a journalist.
Yes.
And I'm asking you this as a journalist. Have you put these questions to the Electoral Commission? Have you put these questions to the police and said, look, because you make an allegation here that Mugisha Muntu tried to reinforce.
Charles,
yes.
Allow me. Also, Muntu is not carrying out consultations as a presidential aspirant. He's not.
He is consulting as a party leader.
He even stopped consulting a long time ago. He was consulting before he formally left the FDC to start his own party. So you could say
General Muntu recently held meetings in Hoima. And,
yes, those are not consultation meetings.
What explains the contradiction between the two? Mugisha Muntu is an opposition leader, no matter what people might say about him. I have a different opinion. I think he's one of the most straight Ugandans that you can have, and that the accusation of him being a mole is politics as usual. Bobi Wine doesn't have a formal party structure, has a movement called People Power. But before that, Kizza Besigye was never allowed to do anything. He would be pulled out of radio stations. Now, the argument cannot be supporting the incumbent.
But it depends on the momentum.
Yes.
The argument, Robert, that the momentum everyone comes with justifies or brings in the police actions. However much the police is acting.
Is it momentum or method of work?
I think it's the momentum.
It's not
Yes.
method of work.
Yes, Robert.
It is the weight you have and the threat you have on the system. I think police or the security agencies perceive Bobi Wine as more of a threat than Muntu to the establishment. But Charles, what happened in Kasangati and Gayaza? reminded me of what happened a few years ago, 2016, June, when one presidential aspirant, Mama Mbabazi, attempted to go to Mbale.
2015.
2016 June.
No, 2015.
No, 2016.
2016 we had finished the election.
2015 June, yes. He was stopped by Felix Kawesi, the late.
And the momentum was also so big, eh? Like the thread.
Yeah, there was a momentum.
He was perceived by that time to be maybe having the structure of the NRM and what have you. He was stopped, jailed for a few hours and later released. But the question should be, what is contained in consultation? What is consultation? How do we interpret consultation? Is it by having a public rally? Is it having an indoor meeting? Or who do you consult? Do you consult the people who already know your agenda and strategy, or you consult people who you want to sell your ideas to? To me, that's where the contention is. Does the police interpret the law in its right sense, or it is just playing politics and trying to just let one person in the names of President Museveni to move around? The police
has argued,
for example, when
if you're consulting,
a moment, Charles,
yes.
When Chibogan, the man blocked the road for several hours because he was speaking to Azei, and that is okay for the NRM.
Where were people parking?
The cars had stopped. That is okay. But when Bobby Wine says, I'll have a rally in a playfield just next to a road, then that is a problem. That's where police has double standards. And maybe what my sister here has said, that police sometimes refuses deliberately to respond to letters written to police, people just informing police of their consultation meetings. That is where the problem comes in.
So what kind of questions are we asking as the Fourth Estate to the different players?
Can I first say something about who they allow and who they don't? Because this Mugisha Muntu question issue has come up so many times, and if Yusuf Serunkuma had been here, I think he would have, because he had talked about covertly conducting their operations. Mugisha Muntu doesn't first go and announce and hold big conferences and say that this is happening, and because of that, I think the police, it's not about the threat they think he poses, but it's how many people are there going to be at his consultations, how many people, like the publicity he has given to this event, how many people will it attract, and how much of no, I can't call it chaos or interruption or anything, but how will Museveni see that, or something like that. But also, I wanted to say that we should actually stop looking at who they allow and who they don't allow, and just look at what gives them the power to refuse that, because consultations for presidential aspirants are mandatory. They are in the Presidential Elections Act. And they're supposed to be done now, not less than 12 months to the election.
There is a valid argument they raise, and he was talking about it.
The police.
The interpretation of consultation is that you're listening back to the people you're speaking to. You're not standing on a podium and selling them a message. And that's fundamentally different.
You listen to what? Before you listen, you have to tell them. You have to talk to them.
Yes, but do you do that at a rally, or do you do that in a meeting?
So how do you draw this line between a rally and a consultative meeting?
I think, Charles, the police is not supposed to be concerned about how I do my consultations. The police should be in position to only give me protection, the protection that I need. Instead of asking me to bring dogs, bring toilets, to bring all these facilities, I mean, give me what you can give me, because I've given you a notice that on this particular date, I'm going to be consulted.
But the Electoral Commission Act at the same time, and the Presidential Elections Act says you can't start campaigns before the campaign period is allowed.
It's a consultation. And what
which is also provided for by the
what the Electoral Commission has to tell me is tell me certain guidelines. We agree, like they have said. They set guidelines. They said, please don't hold processions, don't do this, and how you negotiate.
But
how you negotiate will determine on how you proceed. But again, if I violate the guidelines of the Electoral Commission, it shouldn't be the police to weigh in. It should be the Electoral Commission to tell me, hey, Chagulani or Moses, you are overstepping what we had agreed. Please, can you refrain?
Yeah, but I'm wondering why we're surprised that the police responds the way it is responding, because it imagined, someone was commenting, I think, on a social media platform the other day and saying if it was the era of General Kale Kaihura, he would have sent out warnings and said we have intercepted intelligence information that tells us no, this is going to be chaotic, they are going to cause chaos, which is the
they're going to ban transformers.
They are going to ban transformers, they are going to do this, they are going to do that. But my question is, what do we read from the same action in response to opposition to the incumbent over a period of time? The actors have changed. The actors who were beating Besigye up in 2005, 2006, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2014, 2015, 2016 have changed over time, at least in the leadership structure of the police. The arguments remain largely the same, but this is the first time you see a tripartite civil discussion between the key players. Moving forward, Agatha, does this make any, will this make any difference? Will they have, the people power people went back to reorganize, reschedule some of their consultative meetings. Will they be able to hold them now that they have had a discussion?
You started well by saying the actors have changed, and on both ends, because for the last almost 20 years, the main recipient has been Kizza Besigye. So for people, if people thought that it was because it is Kizza Besigye who they have had enmity over a woman or something like that, they are now wrong. That it will be for whoever tries to threaten President Museveni's grip on power. When Kale Kaihura left office in March, was it March?
Yes,
or
March
2017. Everyone was jubilating, and I remember Besigye, who had been tormented the most by Kaihura, went on TV and said, "But you people have got it wrong. As long as the person, the topmost person that gives these orders is still around, it doesn't matter whether it's Besigye or the man who is in charge now, who we all thought is." So I don't think this tripartite meeting will change anything. We all know that what was going on, the police knew it. I was told that in that meeting it became just denial. No, we didn't do this. No, we didn't know about it. No, it's overzealous, our overzealous young officers. But we all know that what they don't want is what has happened the previous 3 or 4 actually election cycles. So we shouldn't be surprised.
There's a question that concerns us as media practitioners, how we cover these things. You've seen the exchange, especially between the police and the people power people. The police issued a statement on Friday or Thursday evening, issued a statement to say the people power group had effectively spinned the discussion and especially the admission of guilt. Because immediately after the meeting, there was a press conference in Kamocha to relay, and also comments from people power spokespeople to relay the discussions, the closed discussions before the Electoral Commission. I said, police came in and admitted and said, we're wrong, we're making mistakes. And the Electoral Commission was challenging them. And yet these were some of the issues that were. How will the media be able to move beyond picking sound bites from the different actors who of course have an intention of telling the story the best way it represents them?
I think the best way to go about is to have sources within the camps.
Can we detach ourselves and sentiments, our own sentiments?
Of course we can.
No.
Why not?
Interesting that the two of you disagree right on air.
Why not?
What does this mean going forward?
that whole objectivity, impartiality
It's
thing
classroom
is a
work.
fallacy. Because at the end of the day, we are Ugandans before we are journalists. The things that we are going to look at also when you see that baby that was tear gassed in Kasangati, and you're going to think, but how? And when you're writing a story, you're not going to even ask the police why. But because
When,
surely-
you can't start
when you
facts.
detach your
You can't
emotions,
start
I don't
you-
know.
facts without
yes,
putting your opinion
when you
and
put
your
your opinion,
bias.
your biases right at the front, when do you remove yourself and say, here I'm acting as a journalist and I'm going to stick to the
Yes.
facts, and I'm going to ask every party
I
involved.
am not going
Okay,
to.
Charles.
So I'm going to speak to the mother or the parents of
Yes.
this child. I'm going to speak to the police
That what?
and say what
That
happened.
what did your 1 day old baby do wrong to be
No, no,
be
no,
a
no,
gangster and
no,
sent
How
to
did
no,
it
no.
happen? Where was the baby? Maybe the mother moved the baby where they were not supposed to move them.
No,
Maybe they
but-
didn't protect
but
him enough.
before that, whether it's a baby or not, me the question I'm going to ask is, was this necessary? Was this war zone? What has triggered it? Was it commensurate to the threat they are fighting?
Yes, and you're going
So,
to ask
I mean,
other people to give you those answers. You're not going to draw the conclusions yourself.
Yes.
No, you
People,
guys
Charles.
stop thinking that for us we don't have minds of our own.
No, you have.
Well,
you
you
have,
do,
you have
but-
mind.
and
you,
that mind is supposed
you have
to-
an opinion that you can put across on a show like this. But when you're writing a story, you should be.
You should do it.
Or
You
when-
shouldn't be biased. You should
Okay.
set the facts
I
as
say
they
that.
are.
How will the other
Speak
people
for
trust
parties.
you?
I'm
No,
going
no,
to
Charles,
allow
how
you
will the other
live in
parties
that.
trust you?
I'm going to
Yes,
allow you
Are you,
live in
say, are
that
you saying
denial.
that it would be wrong for a journalist to go and say, look, this is what is happening in Kasangati, the police is tear gassing people, and they have dispersed the rally that was scheduled to take place here? Is it wrong?
No, that's right. You're,
So
being,
that's
you're
right.
reporting
You're
facts
reporting
as
the
they
facts
are.
as they are.
Yes.
Not
so
not
at
putting
what point do
interpretation
you
to
say
them.
I'm getting attached to what is happening?
Hmm?
So
Because
interpretation is when I do
you have
what?
a baby who has been tear gassed, and I bring you pictures of the baby that has been tear gassed. I have a letter of police clearing Chagulani to go on with these consultations. It is here. I have it
You
as
have
a
a
journalist.
letter.
You
You
have
see,
Mr. Chagulani.
Cheyune,
You
walking
have
to
the
rally.
law.
Facts
You
that
have
the law says ABCD. This is what police did.
Now, look,
Now,
this
You're
is
not
what
being,
I-
you're not being biased. You're
I
stating
think
facts.
we are in the current situation because of one main reason. This problem has been pointed out by Dr. Chiza Besigye. I will repeat, not as a politician, but as a journalist. The more the state organs get fused with the regime, with the government, a lot of these mistakes are bound to happen. And from becoming mistakes, they become an inherent problem, and society tries to live with them. And when you write about something that is wrong from the side of government, you become opposition. When you write something that is good and it's a matter of law and it is true, you become the other side. It
But
should-
that has
opposition-
happened
the
both ways.
opposition
Even the
also
opposition
accuses-
takes
Yeah.
Accuses
But
people trying
what
to
I
do their
want to
job
ask
of
Charles-
being of being biased. I mean, of being pro-government. Now, the team that was following Museveni
We are
on the
branded,
trek,
NRM.
yes, were you receiving facilitation like everyone else who was trekking to
This-
be able
they
to?
have a
This
letter?
I
debate-
don't know.
Did
Charles,
they get clearance
Charles,
from the
this
police?
debate began by you talking about what transpired at the offices of the Electoral Commission. So I want to be helped to understand how a journalist can.
Okay, I'll give you first.
Can I
Charles,
first ask?
Charles,
yeah, please go
Can I
ahead and
first
ask.
ask? So there's a meeting, and when it gets done, People Power holds a press conference and says this is what happened. But of course, we know what happened that led to that meeting, and those are facts, not any journalist's sentiments. So after that, what should the journalist do?
No, but thank you very much.
That's context
Thank you very much
now.
for
That's
no, thank
context
you very much
you're
for
putting
taking
to
me
your
back to
story.
to the question I put. The police has complained that after the meeting, I think the police and the Electoral Commission, that after the meeting, People Power sold its narrative. Very few journalists we were working that story at the East African, and one of my colleagues, Raymond Tamale, I remember getting him back on the phone multiple times to get back to Joel Senyonyi, the spokesperson of People Power, to say, this is what you say. What exactly was discussed? Who else said something else? You go back to the Electoral Commission and say, you guys did not allow us to be part of this meeting, because the crowd of journalists that was there was honestly very big. But the risk that you pick a story and you think this is the story and you report it as what was discussed in the meeting, when one of the interested parties has structured it in a way that benefits them. I'm giving my opinion here, and the years I have spent in the newsroom on both sides, as a reporter, as an editor, and as a commentator and show host on radio and TV, is to say sometimes in a time like this we need to guard against being carried away by the first soundbite that we get, because it can be deliberate spin. When you get the facts, you find actually these are the issues that were presented. This is the way forward that we agreed on. When the facts become available, you find that the facts as were presented, or the complaints that were presented, was actually a bit different, and the way forward that was agreed was a bit different from what one person told you. It's natural. In law, they call it corroboration. Pick information from other people that lead you to agreeing that where you were not, hearsay evidence, I think they call it?
Yeah.
Yes. What is alleged could be true because 1, 2, 3 people say this is what was transpired in the meeting. That sensitivity, for me, on this last week, or from that meeting, wasn't available.
You two lawyers call it the right to fair hearing.
No.
In that context, after listening to what the Senyunyis and the people are saying, go back to Electoral Commission, go back to police. We, as the media, we should avoid being used right now for people who want to suit their political interests, their agendas. We should remain neutral. However much my sister here says,
Neutrality,
we can never
throw
be
neutrality out of
objective,
the
separatism.
out of
No,
one window.
no,
But we
I'm
should
not
try
saying
as
that.
much as possible
And you
to be
guys
objective.
should get me right. I don't want to be discredited as a journalist that my stories are not neutral. I have said that it is impossible to achieve what we call objectivity. First of all, maybe if it was an American journalist here reporting, and they are not,
They're some of the most biased.
and
They are
first
also-
way-
they also have
no,
their
but-
biases.
Yes.
and they are so detached to seeing your baby or your sisters or your neighbor's baby being taken through that. And this is every day. So if these things happen, we've reported them since 2000, and even before that, even the 1996 election wasn't any better. You naturally take a side. And the side is not the police, because the police is, and I have an editor maybe who has influenced my thinking of our role is to afflict the comfortable and comfort the afflicted. It's not very right, but we have been the afflicted, not the police. The police has not been a victim in this. You can talk of the guy the policeman that died at Young, but many times. So it's natural
No,
that
I hear you.
when we are going to report,
there is a
and
difference.
the other
There is a
thing,
difference, Agatha, between reporting facts. Police fired tear gas to dislodge. Isn't that how we frame our stories?
Yes.
To stop a campaign rally of Dr. Kizza Besigye, of Robert Sentam Chagulanyi, of whoever other candidate might emerge. The facts are the facts. Or a baby was taken into hospital after they were affected by.
So
but if you're reporting about a meeting that happened, and
that
we
a
walk out of
meeting
this
that you
studio,
were
this is a
denied.
meeting place. Walk out of this studio, and we are telling accounts of what happened inside here.
From
Each one of us,
I
from one person. That can't be the story.
I think, Charles, I
but
think
you were sending your reporter to tell Senyonyi to say who said what, and we both know that cannot happen.
No.
When we are writing
When-
stories,
when I tell my
we are
reporter-
at the back of our
Yes.
minds.
When I
we
tell my
have-
reporter, ask Senyonyi, ask Taremwa. If you can't find Taremwa, ask find Simon Byabaka Mamugenyi. If you can't find Simon Byabaka Mamugenyi,
Find
find
Bukenya.
I think-
find Bukenya Paul.
That-
If you
Go
can't
to
find
police.
that, go to police. If you can't find Paul Enamaye, find
Enanga.
Onyango. If you can't find
That's-
I think
Onyango,
just-
find Enanga. If you can't find Enanga, and all those voices,
Even in
are
circumstances
supposed-
I
where
am not
they
against
refuse
that.
are supposed to be reflected in
And-
the final
and
product.
that's not the
That
initial
either goes on
question.
air. Yes, it was, I think.
I think
He
we are
was
drawn in this
detaching
debate.
our emotions. That was what
no,
I said.
I was
not to.
asking, the police has complained that the media took a narrative given by one of the parties. And we didn't discuss that.
So the
did we?
police wanted us to carry their narrative.
No.
Okay. I
A
think we are
neutral
limited.
narrative
I
that
think we are
listen-
drawn,
Yes.
drawn in this particular debate because of one, what happened at East African, where you are the editor. When you look at the story that was published by the Daily Monitor, they say that police and people power accept mistakes. So either party accepted that there was some form of
Fair enough.
excesses.
Fair enough.
So the police cannot come out and say the media took sides. When we've told you, when we've said that this is what happened, the police accepted that there were some excesses.
Gentlemen and lady,
And-
do we appreciate the fact that as mainstream journalists, all of us who are seated here, we carry sometimes unfairly the burden of the many people publishing in the name of journalists when they're not journalists?
Yes.
I think sometimes that
yes.
happens.
No, a lot of times this is happening because various platforms, you have various online publications that are trying to beat a deadline. You have people tweeting, even in our own newsrooms, trying to tweet to break the story and get on it faster. How do we get against something, things like that going forward? Maybe that's something we need to ponder on. We need to take a commercial break. When we come back, we'll pick up this discussion with the Electoral Commission indicating its plans, its intentions, together with the Attorney General, to appeal the ruling that says 6 members of parliament are sitting in parliament illegally because they were wrongly elected. And then also we'll crown this discussion with a debate on the Rwanda-Uganda attempts at normalizing relations. We'll be right back. Welcome to this last segment of the Fourth Estate, and we'll start briefly with following up on our domestic, electorally related discussions with the Electoral Commission. The Electoral Commission, I think 2 weeks ago, lost a petition by Eddie Kwizera, a former member of Parliament, which challenged the elections midterm of MPs to represent newly created constituencies that were not created by the Electoral Commission, but after they became new administrative units. These are new municipal councils that were created. At least 6 members of parliament are affected by this. Therefore, were supposed to get out of parliament. The other 2 had run to maintain old constituencies, I think. There are 6. There are 6 who are affected. The Electoral Commission, this whole conundrum, it's ballooned the size of parliament to 461 at the moment. And you have, we debated it last week here, you have a debate going on in parliament for elevation of certain municipal areas into cities, and there are people already campaigning on the imagined constituency that will be created by this. The Electoral Commission is trying to mitigate against this, I think, in the attempts to appeal. I know you spoke to the Electoral Commission just before you came on, a little before you came on air earlier today, about what they are planning to do.
Yep. The Electoral Commission says, first of all, they have applied for an interim injunction to stop the execution of the ruling that came from the Constitutional Court.
Which is to order these guys to get out of parliament.
Yes, so they want the Court of Appeal to first stay the implementation of the ruling, because the ruling of the Constitutional Court implied that, first of all, these MPs are illegal in parliament, so they must come out as soon as possible. So what the Electoral Commission is trying to say is that, no, the Constitutional Court did not take a proper ruling, so before we challenge it, please first stay the implementation. But secondly, they have also applied for a record or the judgment of the Constitutional Court, such that they are able to extract their grounds of defense, of appeal, to challenge the decision of the Constitutional Court.
Agatha, let me come to you. You're the lawyer in this room. Is this a battle the Electoral Commission can win?
Well, you know, interpretation of the law is one thing that is very tricky. That's why sometimes they call it a double-edged sword. The 5 justices of the Constitutional Court, their problem was that you elected, you brought these MPs to Parliament at a time when there's not, we don't provide for that sort of election. That the elections that are provided for under the Constitution and the Electoral Commission Act are the general election and a by-election, where a seat falls vacant. That in this case, it was neither. By you let's say, I'm going to use the example of where I come from in Shema, that by you carving out Shema municipality out of Shema North.
Can I ask the studio to reduce the images a little, because I think our viewers may not be able to pick all of them, to pick all the faces that are on those images, the affected members of parliament from the various municipalities. Go ahead.
So the Justice Madrama, who wrote the lead judgment, was saying that by carving out Shema municipality out of Shema North does not create a vacancy, because the people of Shema municipality were already being represented by the MP of Shema North. So you cannot mid-term say we are electing an MP to cover the vacancy, which was never there. Now, I don't know if the justices of the Supreme Court would take a different view. They can, but I don't know, and that makes it hard to even predict what will be the outcome. But I found the reasoning of the Constitutional Court very, very valid. That we already had in Shema North still an MP representing us. If you cut it into Shema North and Shema municipality, it's already being represented by the people.
What in your view is the Electoral Commission trying to mitigate by appealing this ruling?
I think the backlash, because the backlash and also the costs that they are supposed to pay for the petition, I think, because in actual sense, because it's the one responsible. Even the MPs that were elected, they can take it to court to meet.
I think I said last week that, or the other week, that if I was one of the affected MPs, I would drag the Electoral Commission to court, because I did not nominate myself.
Exactly.
I did not quit the...
So you don't want to be the Electoral Commission that everyone would think you don't know what you're doing, so you have to fight and...
How about, the Electoral Commission is chaired by a judge of the High Court.
Actually, wasn't he at the Court of Appeal by the time
he was actually
taken to the
he would have been
Constitutional Court?
On the quorum. He would have been on the on the panel that decided this case. How did he miss that? How did Justice Simon Yabaka Mugenyi miss that? And how how do you see him and Jennifer Ngeyo and the Attorney General's chambers respond to this? I mean, take this forward.
Charles, I don't know how...
You don't want to throw a good money after bad money.
I don't know, you should ask him why he didn't see this happening. But I think also
have we checked if this is the first time this is happening? Have all the constituencies that have been created, have all of them had their first MP elected during a general election? Because
not necessarily, no, because Eddie Kwizera's petition focused on these new creations. But you have had exactly the same thing happen when new districts have been created. So the incumbent has the first choice to choose where they want to belong. If they decide to belong to the new district, there is no by-election.
Constituents.
If they decide to remain in the old district, there is no election. If they decide to move to the new district, still there is no election concerning them as individuals. But there is an election for the newly created entity.
Charles.
And Agatha raises a very good example. Shema. That caused the most controversy because the incumbent
moved from Shema North to...
just didn't move from Shema North to the Shema municipality. He was a candidate and an incumbent member of parliament of a different
I remember him coming to parliament before he was sworn in.
And that costs the taxpayer twice. You are voting...
Someone is already earning.
Yes, and then there had to be a by-election.
Yes.
There had to be a by-election after him in Shema North. You know that happened.
For me, Charles, I think the argument should be taken a little further to look at whether we need all these members of parliament. Do we really need the 461? And what are they doing? Chene here has been running stories in the Monitor about the contribution of these members. Most of them don't attend parliament. They are doing totally nothing apart from raising numbers for the ruling NRM to vote on any important matter they think they want in parliament. But in terms of representation, oversight, monitoring government programs, the numbers are not helping us.
Some of the MPs that Cheyune here scored 0 have been saying, who says the job of a member of parliament is only to speak on the floor? And then number 2, a little digression here. I think if you asked me, I would take that assessment a little further, and I agree with you. Parliament has ballooned precisely because of this ad hoc creation of numbers that nobody has checked for a long time, and Eddie Kwizera, I think, helps us to take a deeper look into that. But for you, which we'll take offline, is I would I would compute the number of times members of Parliament actually are in session. Yes, the number of sessions in hours. Divide that by 461 members of Parliament to see effectively in a session
Patrick,
how
Charles,
how many what opportunity would someone have to say, and then before you go into the content of what they said,
well,
when they had the opportunity to say.
That would be something to look at, maybe for my next study. But to be exact, to help the viewers, the numbers that are for MPs that are elected is 444. When you add the ex-official ministers members, that's when we go to 461. But still, there's been debate about the ballooning number, because we are now looking at a possibility of having up to 600 in the next
and
election.
extending the chamber, the new chamber.
But going back to the subject of this discussion, that we have members who are kicked out of Parliament by the Constitutional Court. How do we get here? What is it that the Electoral Commission is trying to protect by filing their appeal? The Electoral Commission was advised much earlier, before these elections were held, because in Parliament there was a lot of debate with MPs, most of them opposition, saying that, look, we are going into an election for constituencies, first of all, that have not been gazetted as electoral areas. And again, we are going into elections mid-term. What is the implication of what we are doing? And I think, apart from raising the numbers, we are raising the cost of facilitating these MPs, and we are burdening the taxpayer. Why don't we wait for the elections to happen during the next general election? And the debate has been, no, you're speaking because you're opposition and you can't raise numbers. You don't have voters.
You're not going to win this.
You're not going to win. But matters of the Constitution, I believe, should be respected. Why? Because the Constitution serves no party. It serves all Ugandans.
Ideally.
And that's what it should be. But then we end up in most of the things that we see in this country of ours today, is that most of the institutions have been patronized to fall and play or give allegiance to a reigning political party, to NRM today. When you see the move by the Electoral Commission, you will see that they are coming in mainly to save the NRM members, someone would argue.
Among the victims and opposition.
Yes, there are two.
From Bujiri.
There's an opposition. There are two opposition. There's one in UPC, Napach municipality. But by the Electoral Commission, the referee being seen most of the time playing partisan politics, your intention here in the appeal will be not detached from your political
if we detached a little bit, would the constituents and the candidates allow the existence of an administrative area without representation? Wouldn't there be an element of pressure from elsewhere beyond the political parties?
How are the constituents, the voters, prepared? Do we have civic education? Have we told these people what it means to create a new constituency? When you look at what Agatha here was talking about in Shema, it happened in Hoima, where a new district was created, Chikuwe, and the incumbent woman MP said, no, I'm moving to Chikuwe. So
even
they left,
Kabong.
even Kabong. So they left
But how come
vacancy.
for her she wasn't elected? Yet Elioda had to
No, because she went to
a new...
she's an incumbent.
Yes.
So the incumbent is not subjected to that. They just have a choice to make a choice and say...
But there's also a new one
Elioda
coming.
was an incumbent. Elioda was an incumbent.
No,
in Shema.
Elioda moved constituencies.
How?
This was creation of a constituency, not a district. Within the same district, yes.
So
This is the
how
woman
much
who-
civic education do we have that when we create a new administrative unit, this is what it means, such that the voters can be patient enough to wait for the next election.
Well, and the job of civic education doesn't belong to the Electoral Commission, it belongs to the Uganda Human Rights Commission.
Even
we need
the
to move
Electoral
on.
Commission, but it has...
No,
Even
Electoral
the
Commission
political
does
parties-
voter
It has
education.
The political parties can
what
do
is the
voter
difference?
education.
There's a difference
But
between voter
What is
education.
uncivic education?
Yeah? There's a difference
But
between civic
Charles-
education and
Charles,
voter education.
What more I wanted to say was,
Mm.
like I was saying, interpreting the law can be, someone can interpret it differently from the other. You might find that the Electoral Commission and its lawyers thought, since there's a new constituency, it follows
Naturally,
yeah,
beggars
that,
that
it
you need
needs
to.
representation. Yeah, which
But even the question in Parliament
we'll
was
wait
on
and
who-
see. We'll wait and see what the appeal, the grounds of appeal look like, and how the justices of the Supreme Court respond. I mean, rule on the appeal, if the appeal is actually finally filed. If someone would wonder and say, is it too much to let these guys drop out of Parliament and go back and campaign for those same constituencies, since you have an election now exactly 11 months away? Today.
So
Today being the 12th, you have an election coming up exactly 11 months away from today. We need to move on. Rwanda and Uganda continue on efforts to normalize relations between them. We did debate a little bit here on the visit to Kigali, which was tweeted by the president of Rwanda, Paul Kagame, of the special envoy from President Yoweri Museveni in Ambassador Adonia Ayebare. Ambassador Adonia Ayebare represents Uganda, is Uganda's permanent representative at the United Nations in New York, but went on a special mission to meet with the Rwandan president in an effort to improve relations. Then what we see next is that the government of Uganda is responding. First it goes to the court martial, the general court martial, and drops charges. The DPP wrote and said we are withdrawing charges against these 9 individuals who are affected. Then a press conference by the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Sam Kutesa, who said this is an effort to normalize relations. I think part of the deal that was negotiated has been a contention on Rwandan nationals being held in Uganda and Ugandans being held in Rwanda over various charges. And these 9 people are released, handed over to immigration for processing to be repatriated back to Rwanda, and Rwanda was supposed to do a reciprocal release, which I think has happened since. That is part of the discussion. The other part of the discussion that is emerging now is victims of the alleged crimes these individuals committed. I have spoken to some of the victims, women who say their husbands were abducted from this country and taken over to Rwanda. They have been jailed. They haven't had communication from
and
them.
they were taken by these people. That
Yeah,
have
by
been
some
released.
of these people have been released. The suspects, these are some of the charges against them, and they haven't been able to communicate with them. Mothers who say their children either were killed or have disappeared. Now, this is a political negotiation, and governments know how they do their things. I want to start with you, Moses.
well, someone would ask, while these ones were in jail in Uganda, were they communicating to their families back home in Rwanda? That is a question whose answer we don't have. But at least we can say that the visit by Adonia to Kigali has started to bear fruit after a long standoff that has lasted close to a year between Uganda and the neighbor in Rwanda. The aspect or the question on justice for those that were involved, I think will be subject to follow up, especially from our government, which people will need to know. My only concern and point of interest is when we were starting to face this standoff, there was no mention of Ugandans detained in Rwanda. Uganda was saying, or Kampala was saying that Kigali was misbehaving on economic grounds and was conducting economic sabotage. Our conversation today...
And espionage.
I think the espionage aspect was Kigali accusing Uganda. Okay. But what should be our concern today is, okay, when we release these people, at what point are we going to have our border opened? Then secondly, there was the aspect of Uganda denying.
So
the
what
accusations
is
in
more
the very
important
first
in your
place.
view? Is it opening the border or freedom
No,
of the people
I'm
who
look- I'm
are
looking
detained
at-
in either in jails of either country?
I'm looking at the diversions our leaders are bringing into play. Because the very first instance was about the closure of the border, with Rwanda saying we are doing renovation, and the renovation turned into accusations of Ugandans, Rwandans being arrested in Uganda. And Kampala denied. They said we don't have them. These ones you're releasing back to Rwanda, you say you've been having them for 3 years, at least some of them. So what is it that you are refusing? Could it also be true that we have come here, or to this point, because of backdoor dealings that are criminal by our country? Shouldn't we be getting an observation,
ask Agatha. Agatha
an
should give you an
observation
Why?
and an apology from
Why do
from
I
our
have
own
an
people?
answer? of
You're a
backdoor
journalist and
dealing?
a lawyer. You're a journalist and a lawyer.
because they kept us in the dark for
I
so
obviously
long.
don't have the answers to those questions. I am also asking questions to whoever I can find to ask questions.
So we also have questions for our government, and unfortunately, these people are not willing to speak. So the level of trust between the media and the state and the government that serves us is very limited, especially on this particular one.
Or maybe the questions we're asking, or who we're asking those questions.
I mean,
You may not put...
you have Kutesa, who has been handing over, who has been the face of at least the foreign relations with the neighbors, and is not willing to speak. Today he comes up and says, now we are taking them back in the full view of the media. But when the accusation came that you arrested, detained these people, and they have never been subjected to any system of justice, you denied.
Agatha, where does this take these relations, the exchange of prisoners, if you would want to put it that way? I think that's the diplomatic language.
Well, I think this discussion takes us back to Rwanda, to the MOU in Rwanda. In Rwanda, in that MOU, I think Rwanda had the highest number of demands. And if you had the ambassador of Rwanda here, Frank Mugambage, at that press conference, he said, this is a welcome step. It's one of the steps to normalize relationships. What he meant was, it's not satisfactory.
We still need more.
Because for them, they are saying that there are people that are incarcerated here are more than 100, and you have released 9. And the precondition for opening the border for them, they have insisted, is on the release of, and they're not saying let them, exonerate them or discharge them. They're saying either take them through due process and charge them, or if you can't, send them to us, we try them here. So that hasn't happened yet. That's why people who are thinking that things are going to change immediately, we could still have a long wait. But is there a difference now from previously? Definitely yes. At least now there is that admission, especially on Uganda's part, that there are tensions. We first heard it from President Museveni when he was talking about Ambassador Adonia's visit to Rwanda, that in a bid to normalize tensions. But here they have always said they have no problem with Rwanda. Secondly, yeah, like these steps, at least there's because admission happens first, and at least then you take steps to resolve what is going on. So I think it's a step in the right direction, and I hope we stay on that course, because there are many people that want to leave the other side and come here, because you know how many people have both families in both sides. Then there are economic factors that Uganda has been earning over $60 million from the exports. The exports to Rwanda and has shrunk to almost nothing now. Yes.
How about, let me come to you lastly. How do these victims get justice? Because they are here. None of them are here. Mothers who say their sons were abducted and taken across the border. By some of these people have been released, especially the names, the list of names of the 9 that were released rank highest. We may not know who the other 91 that Rwanda says are. I have seen a list, and I've discussed it on this show before. I have seen a list of the people Rwanda accuses Uganda of detaining. Some of them, I think my list is not 100, could be about 60 individuals that have been picked up at various times and were in detention, some for a number of years. But I have also spoken to people who say, my son was kidnapped and taken across the border by these people. I have seen women who do not know the fate of their husbands who were kidnapped from here. I think I've spoken to one woman whose husband actually is Congolese, but of the Nyamulenge tribe, who was kidnapped from here, was on a business trip, was kidnapped, I think, from Kabale, from a hotel in Kabale, and the next thing they realized they'd taken him across the border. She tried to follow up in Kigali, wasn't able to locate him, and she's been on this for the last 4 years. And she says some of the people who are among the released kidnapped her husband.
Charles, I think it will be very hard for the families to get justice since the due process of the law has been hijacked by politics.
Withdrawal of charges is the due process of the law,
Sure.
isn't it, Agatha?
Are you sure?
The DPP
Charles?
can decide to withdraw charges
Because of
at their
what? Lack of
discretion,
evidence and what?
because they're the
But-
prosecutor.
But there's an admission
Mhm.
by what we are saying that both sides were spying on each other. There's an
Mhm.
admission by what we are saying. But for me, Charles, as long as we do not address the fundamental issues that caused the problems we are having right now,
Mm.
Rwanda and Uganda will never be at the same page.
Mm.
As long as
caused?
President Museveni and President Kagame continue undermining themselves, undermining the security of the two countries, we're going to have a repeat of what we've had for the last 12 months. We are going to have our borders closed again, and we're going to have people suffering at the borders.
Okay. Thank you very much. Our time is out. We need to get out of here and prepare for another long tomorrow and long week. Thank you very much, Herbert Ziwa, reporter with NTV, and welcome back from the trek.
Thank you.
Thank you very
From
much.
the bush.
From the trek. Thank you very much, Agatha Ateire, a lawyer
you.
and an independent journalist.
Thank
I
you,
understand you'll be
Charles.
graduating this week, so congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to you, Moses Cheyune, reporter for the Daily Monitor based at Parliament of the Republic of Uganda. From me, thank you very much to you all our viewers who stay up late to watch this show and are the reason we keep going year on year. Thank you very much to the production crew that stay up late to deliver the show to you. From me, it's a good night.